Okay, well, it's the 27th of May 2023, and we're now 11 days off leaving on our IBR trip. So just getting last minute things sorted. I've just been through to the optometrist to pick up a set of new reading glasses, and they made the script wrong. They made them as distance vision glasses, so tried them on, quite liked them, decided I should keep them, made a deal with them, they're fixing the problem, got to keep these ones for 183 bucks. Seems like a win, less than 30% of the actual cost of them for me to have ordered them, so yeah, reasonable outcome. But the downside is that the reading glasses may or may not be ready for us before we leave for the IBR, but you know, didn't happen before, so I'm not really going to miss them. Prep's going well. We're in a pretty calm place right now. We've obviously had nothing to do other than prep. That's all we can do for the last year or so. Obviously the SBR in September last year brought things through to a point a bit earlier on than we would have otherwise done, so largely when we'd finished the SBR we could have turned around and with very little or minimal extra work really been ready to do the IBR. But in that time we've continued to beaver away, thinking about things, prepping things, making sure that we're as ready as we can be. So that's meant that we're in a pretty good spot now, 11 days out from leaving. There's no real panic stations or anything that's incredibly last minute, apart from these glasses, which we only decided that I should try and do last week. So yeah, no real stress, feeling good about the whole thing. The bike's over at Bill's and it's pretty much ready to go. There's a short list of things that we've got to do, which won't really take much more than a day in the garage. All of the servicing and everything else that we needed to do to that I did last year at the end of the SBR trip, so all of that kind of stuff's all ready to go. So yeah, the kind of stuff that we've got left to do when we get there is the extra bits that we decided to do in the interim. So things like the extra wheel that we bought to ship off to checkpoint 2 for a rear wheel change. We've got to fit the tyre to that. That didn't have a valve in the wheel, so I've got a TPMS pre-programmed to take over and insert in that. Once they're in there, then I can fit that tyre onto that and so on. So I think the plans are to try and actually use that new stuff during the first 2 legs and use the existing proven wheel in leg 3. So we're juggling. It's kind of a bit of a logistical juggling act when we get there, though, not to wear the IBR tyres down prematurely. So the old tyres got to be moved over from the existing rim over to the new one, which we'll use for running around for 5 days before we before we start heading up towards Pittsburgh for the start. So I think there's actually about 3 tyre changes that we've got to do in total to get to the point that we're actually ready to head off. So there's a little bit of extra messing around because of that. Yeah, cool. A nice R1 over there. It's a couple of R1s or R6s. Yeah, so we've got all of our food and all of the tools and bits and pieces prepped that we need to take with us. That's all ready to go. Everything's pretty much ready to pack. We haven't packed yet because some of that stuff is, well, you know, some of that stuff's still on the bike being used today. So things like this mount's got to get taken off and get ready to go. That's all coming with us. Yeah, so bits like that we can't really do prematurely, but everything is known to be available and ready to pick up and pack. So I'm feeling pretty good about all of that stuff. We're currently running through planning exercises. So Bill and myself, and also Bill and myself, and also James. Oh, good on you, mate. Yeah, Bill and myself and James are running through some planning exercises for the 2017 IBR. James has been kind enough to share some of that content with us so that we have got some real world examples to sort of work through and some problems to solve in terms of how you address the planning problems. And 2017 was a really decent year for complex problems because they had the strings. They threw the strings in the mix for the first time. So some examples of that are in leg 1 you get 3 of the same type of checkpoints. The checkpoints are divided into 5 categories. You get 3 of the same one, and the third one is doubled. Leg 2 you've got 4 of different ones, and the 4th one is tripled. And then going into leg 3 you end up with a full house scenario, so 3 of one, 2 of another, or 2 of one and 3 of another. And then that 4th one is, I think the 4th one may be quadrupled, if not tripled. I'm not sure, I haven't read that one yet, but not in detail. But they provide some really interesting exercises there in terms of how you're able to sort of visualize those problems on the map, so that you can start to build up some strategies from that visual representation. So yeah, this has been a really interesting and probably a well-timed exercise as well, a couple of weeks out from leaving. It's not too late because we had already been working on some of the bits and pieces that we needed for that. They've been on the go for a while now. We've also been doing other planning exercises before these, so this is a really good time to throw these complex ones in and just test that the methods and the approaches that we're using all work for that kind of problem, and learn how to apply those techniques and the approaches differently, because obviously put a complex problem like that in, and unless you've actually solved that particular problem before, you don't have the answers. So you've got to think it through and then figure out how to meld and adapt and adopt your approach and the tools that you've used. Even you've got to be fairly flexible with how you apply them, and that's what this has been all about. These exercises have been really worthwhile from that perspective. So really looking forward to it from that perspective. Yeah, it's also helping. I'm working through this stuff with Stella, so it really helps for us to understand, you know, what the jobs are, what the task is, and also time it, you know, come up with how long is it going to take us when we actually get there and when we're faced with doing this stuff on the clock. So today was a really good example. I wasn't expecting to have to come down to the optometrist, but I found out that I could, so we made an appointment. That gave us exactly 2 hours to sort of try and cram in planning before we came, and we were trying to get it done in that time frame, and we had a decent exploration of what we were doing, but we recognized that end of that 2 hours that we weren't finished. So I'm going back now, and we're going to start the clock again and carry on and probably try and get it all finished in the next 30-45 minutes, which would mean that from the moment that we get that book at 4 a.m, like we're currently sitting on equivalent of 6, and we want to ideally be out and on the road by 7 if we can. If we can't, that's fine too, you know, but everything like this starts to just chew into time on the clock on the day. So yeah, you want to set yourself some limits and try and perform to that if you can. We're taking quite a practical approach for our first IBR. We're sort of saying, well, we know what our goals are, we're very clear about that. We want to make sure that we're positioning ourselves up well to perform in leg 3, and also with a primary goal to finish, and also safety is a prime concern for us. And while we're not sure how we're going to be able to perform for that many days on the clock, and with very limited sleep opportunities, we're sort of being really measured about how hard we're approaching planning for legs 1 and 2. Make sure we've still got something in the tank for the more valuable leg 3 leg. That seems to be very common advice, and so we're actually taking it to heart. On that first leg that we planned, we were happy with the points that we got out, we were happy with the distance, happy with the point density, happy with the number of hours of sleep that we ended up putting into that, and largely that's the same approach that we're taking for this leg 2 planning exercise against the 2017 stuff now. So yeah, I mean, at this point it's all hypothetical planning. You know, you can try and cram as much as you like in there in order to get the highest hypothetical score out of the exercise, but at the end of the day it doesn't mean that you're going to be able to achieve it. So it's sort of it's a useful exercise to go and benchmark what you're trying to get out of it against the people that you're doing it with. So in this case, Bill and James, and obviously James has got real live first-hand experience of how he approached that particular rally in 2017 when he did it. So he's got some recollection of what the pitfalls were and what he tried to do, and it's interesting watching the difference in the outcome between someone who sets themselves a goal to try and win it versus someone who sets themselves a goal to try and finish it and also holds some stuff in the tank in reserve. And you know, that was really highlighted in leg one. James pretty much managed to almost double the scores out of the planning exercises that Bill and I did. But then, you know, the constraints and the parameters that we set ourselves as guides to start with before we started the planning exercise meant that there would be no way that, unless we compromised on all of those parameters and those limits, that we would not be able to achieve the same degree that James did when he went and planned you know, particularly onerous and all-out sort of effort. And that's what is required of him in order to try and get right up at the top of that leaderboard all the way through the rally. So this is good. This is really good doing this now before we go into it, because we're already coming out with the hard realizations that we cannot be demoralized by seeing ourselves down towards the bottom of those leaderboards at the end of leg one and at the end of leg two. If it's a deliberate act to try to preserve yourself in good condition to go into leg three, then that will be a natural outcome of that against people who go significantly harder through those first two legs. The hope is that obviously by preserving your state, that some of those will end up dropping beneath you on that third leg. And it, you know, that's actually a pretty hard question of self-belief and of strategy and of approach. It's a bit like, you know, a marathon runner trying to assess their overall likely performance by where they stand, you know, at the 10-mile mark, or if you've got a strategy that says I need to pace myself, then you've got to have that faith that pacing yourself at that point is what you need to do. So anyway, I'm waffling now. Saw this guy on the way in. He didn't fool me on the way in either. I didn't think he was police on the way in. So okay, damp roads. Yeah, we're being pretty measured what we're doing right now. You know, there is the question of bike fitness and you know, multiple day fitness and everything on the bike, and it probably would have been good to have tried to have done a little more earlier, but we did reach a point about 3 weeks ago where we sort of said, right now at this point, probably one of the best things that we can do now is to start to limit the number of, you know, high risk exposures and activities that we're doing that could likely have an impact on our ability to turn up at the start line. Having gone and prepped for this now for so long, it really felt very strong. We felt very strongly about the idea of you know, the best thing that we can do towards our finishing opportunity now is actually do less, preserve ourselves, and turn up at the start. And you know, we'll be doing a lot of that now, you know, in terms of how we approach things when we get into the States as well, and what we do before the rally. Yeah, getting to that start line has been a significant challenge, or is still a significant challenge in its own right for us. You know, being over here, being so far away, being in a different time zone, even stuff like insurance prep, sorting out SIM cards, getting all of those insurance clearances that we need, and all that kind of stuff has taken probably a lot more effort and time for us than it would have done other people. Bike prep, doing that remotely, doing that ahead of time, all of that kind of stuff. So having spent as much money and as much time and effort as we already have at this point, we sort of thought, yeah, in terms of activities and what we want to be doing right now, we have to be reasonable and measured about what we're doing. So yeah, no last minute saddle sore runs for us, no extra certificate rides for us now. We've done a reasonable amount in the previous months, and you know, we know that we're well prepped for this, so yeah, it's just a case of now having that self-belief and going with it. Big challenge, but we're really looking forward to it. We're very excited by it. The day counts as they're coming down now do have a degree of anticipation, intrepidation, excitement, all coming in with them, and we found the best way to offset those nerves that are starting to creep in is to continue to do positive preparatory work, which is why these planning exercises have been such a good focus for us to have during these last few days. So yeah, very exciting times, really looking forward to it. And Bill has been such a Bill and James, but Bill constantly and specifically has been such a strong help for us, mentally, physically, in terms of preparation work on the bike, and even him and Debbie both even being willing to receive ridiculous amounts of inbound parcel deliveries and helping to tell us what's turned up when they've turned up. Bill's gone and done a fresh inventory of all the stuff that we've got over there, so that I don't have to guess and scratch my head about what I seem to remember that we might have previously had bought back in 2022, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, logistically this has been a really good, strong challenge as well. So yeah, really pleased with what we've been doing and how it's been approached and all that. So my GoPro crapped out. Well, I've known it's been misbehaving a little bit for months, but I got involved with some proper decent runs and tests of it in and out of work over the last week or so, and realised that it actually wasn't behaving itself properly enough, and it wasn't going to be a reliable camera to bring with us. Not that we were planning on using that as a rally camera, but you know, as a supplementary thing for our own memories and everything else, we really wanted to have the ability to turn the GoPro on and use it in the way that I'm doing now. Even though we're not likely to be able to share much with people during the rally, just through time constraints, and it shouldn't be our focus, you know, the ability to turn it on and just have it recording something as we do things would be lovely for us. So yeah, unfortunately that's been another last minute expense, something that we've had to do. A shout out to Luke in that regard. He's been able to help us get a really strong deal through his GoPro.com membership that I couldn't get hold of myself at all. So he saved us quite a bit of money in that regard. That's all useful. Everything is useful in way of cost savings at this point. So thanks very much, Luke, for that. Also, big shout out to TK and Luke as well on another front. TK is the one who stuck her hand up and said she'd come and house sit for us while we're gone. So close to 5 weeks worth of disruption in her life for that. She's going to be shuffling, working from home at our place with the dog. Her and Luke will be apart for a good period of each week, and then they'll get together probably up at our place over the weekends. But you know, that kind of that's so helpful, really useful. So thank you very much to TK for that. And that's meant, you know, we can just honestly forget about it while we're gone. We know everything's going to be in good hands, and there's escalation points there for her to get help if she needs it with stock and with the house and with the cats, and all that kind of stuff is all taken care of. So that can just become a secondary concern for us while we're doing our trip and focusing on what we need to do while we're away, and that's massive. So thank you. Yeah, and just, I mean, that's it right now. That's it. That's everything, and everything beyond that. Work is not expecting me to be available while we're having to focus on this stuff, so that's another thing off my mind. So thank you to them for allowing us to be completely clear of that obligation and clearing the decks while I'm gone. We've got people and systems in the right places for me to be able to, you know, just completely set and forget and go. That's massive. So yeah, big shout out to Dad as well. He's been enormous in terms of providing assistance from a financial and support perspective in terms of what we're trying to do. Yeah, all of that. We couldn't be doing what we're doing in the way that we're doing it without all of that help. And it's massive, so whoop whoop. Big shout outs and big thank yous all around. Some other significant thank yous, not quite on that same scale, but still significant and worthy of a specific mention. Ken, who's helping us, Ken Phoenix, who's helping us at Checkpoint 2, turning up with a box of supplies that I'll be shipping to him, turning up with tools to help to change that back wheel out, possibly providing a degree of, not undue, but possibly some assistance hands-on potentially at Checkpoint 2. I've got help from Stella as well, so whether we'll need it or not, I don't know. But yeah, being able to knock that wheel out, change the wheel out, and then give him the old one, and then just be able to forget about that and know that that's going to turn back up at Bill's as well with return shipping, huge. And Greg Rice, who stepped in a few weeks back and went on a trip to go and put some eyeballs on a new seat for us in the States, a Russell Daylong, second-hand Russell Daylong seat that turned up out the blue that we were able to put our hands on, and Greg went and checked it out and handed some cash over to the guy who was selling it, so I moved some money through Greg to be able to do that. So he massively helped facilitate that deal. It probably wouldn't have happened without him. And then he helped to on ship that down to Bill's, so that was huge. Thank you, Greg. Yeah. And yeah, also a shout out to the IBR staff and you know, to other people in the IBR teams who have given advice and support in various ways through the prep period, and in particular that's Howard and Mike and the IBR staff as well, who have been good and very approachable for various questions that we've had along the way. They all deserve a shout out. And yeah, just a final reflection on 11 days from now we'll be on the plane heading out, and yeah, we'll be carrying the stuff with us that we remember to pack, and the stuff we forget that we'll forget. And then when we get there, there'll be the final prep work with the bike, and then we'll be on our way and we'll be doing it, and it will be exciting and it will be happening. And yeah, so yeah, not scared, not even massively nervous, really excited, really looking forward to it. We don't know what we don't know. That will always be the case, and it will always be the areas that present the challenges, but we feel that we're pretty well equipped now to be able to respond well and cope with those challenges and be flexible and roll with the punches. We've learned a lot from following Bill through his rallying in the US over the past year as well, in terms of the tenacity, the flexibility and the staying power that's required for dealing with things that don't always go completely as planned. Obviously you hope that they always will, but really they hardly ever do 100%. So yeah, knowing that, approaching these kinds of things with that in mind as well, trying as much to mitigate those kind of risks for things not going as planned, making sure that you've got options which provide other opportunities later if you do need to change plans on the fly. Some of the work that James has been doing with us both has been excellent in that regard, you know, looking at when route planning, looking at you know, various pre-planned adjustments of routes, so looking at options which you can build in to extend and enhance, looking at options that you know you can remove towards the end of your plan or in the middle of your plan if things aren't quite going right. Even having those things noted so that it's clear as to which ones you can potentially drop out without affecting some of the major strategic building blocks of your plan, having them clear enough so that you don't have to rework all of that and figure it out again on the ride. All of those kinds of things come into creating a decent and solid and robust plan, and we try and make sure that we feature all of that stuff now in our in our stepwise approach that we've got documented quite well. So you know, when it comes to leg 2 and 3 and we're starting to get a bit tired and we're unable to really think as well as we might normally when we're completely fresh, then hopefully those checklists that we've got, which underpin our approach, will be a really good structure for us to use and adhere to. Yeah, so it's things like that that are actually giving us that, I wouldn't say confidence, I would call it calmness. There's a massive difference, I feel, between being confident about going to something which is as unknown as this and being well enough prepared that you can approach it and feel calm and positive about you having the ability to respond and adjust and reflect on what it is that you need to do when you're faced with those things. So that's where we're at, that's where I feel that we're at, and I'm hoping that will put us in a good likely position to be finishers, and that's and hopefully finish well as well. You know, maybe we're being bold enough at this point to say we want to finish. That will be our primary goal, apart from safety and safely finishing and so on as well. The primary goal will be finishing. The secondary goal will be trying to finish well and hopefully medal. If we get a bronze medal finish, we'll be delighted. As a rookie 2-up pairing, that'll be cherry on top stuff. And anything beyond that is just even more cream on top. And so that's what we're trying to set ourselves up to be able to do well. Righto, I'm going to stop waffling at this point. I'm going to sign off because I don't know how many people will be interested in listening right through to this point. I know I've not done much in the way of releases on the build-up of this. That's been partly deliberate. You know, you don't really... The job to date has been to quietly get organised and be self-sufficient and manage to build ourselves up privately to get to a point where we're in this state and in this state of mind and at this point in time feeling good about what we're about to do. And I know that there's interest, I know that there's public interest, well not public, but there are friends who are interested in what we're doing, which is really what's prompted me to put this together. It's also a useful test of this camera. And I'll share this sort of privately with that group, and you know, we don't need to be building ourselves up publicly. We don't need to be making ourselves a target for interest within the competitor group in the IBR. I'm quite happy to turn up to be unknowns, underdogs, and without anybody really taking a big strong interest. We don't need that extra pressure. We don't want people coming up and deliberately then attempting to psych us out prior to the start of the event. So yeah, this will be a bit of a New Zealand orientated private release of content. I might share it in the NZ IBA rider group for potentially wider interest, but beyond that I don't think I'll be sharing this particularly widely. So yeah, hopefully this has been of interest to some people. I'll stop there. Alright, thanks guys, and I'm going to try and use the quick app now to stop the recording, see if it's still talking. Something went wrong. Oh great, preview failed to start. Okay, oh, and it still looks like it's recording. Got it. Something went wrong. This kind of shit worries it worries me, but anyway, I'll hit stop and we'll see what we got. Thanks guys, see ya.